Welcome to the Heal Your Hunger Show, where we get to the heart of why you overeat and how to stop. If you struggle with food and weight like I did, welcome home. Welcome to the Heal Your Hunger Show. So happy to have you here. Thank you for joining us. This is going to be an awesome show because I have a fantastic guest, Roy Nelson, the Roy Nelson, spiritual healer and mentor, and my husband. But before we get to that, I want to say that today we have one more day to write a review on iTunes about this show. Email us with a copy and pasted message of what you wrote on iTunes so that we know who wrote it, and then we can send the person who writes the most meaningful review, two different people actually, a care package that contains this awesome t-shirt which says "Eat in Peace." Who doesn't want to eat in peace? It's this beautiful periwinkle shirt with blueberries on it and this beautiful message. And you'll also get a signed copy of my book, Heal Your Hunger, 7 Simple Steps to End Emotional Eating Now, and Roy's book, which is called
Love Notes from Hell.
Love Notes from Hell. It's Roy's personal story of addiction and recovery and his own Nelson method and how he helps people. So just leave a review on iTunes about how this show has touched you, some insights or ahas you've gotten, or some way that you've been really positively affected by this show. And then copy and paste your review in an email and write it to reviews@healyourhunger.com. And we will choose the 2 most meaningful reviews, and don't get all twisted about that. Just write from your heart. That's all. It doesn't have to be super long. Doesn't have to have big words. Just from your heart. That's what makes it meaningful. And email us at reviews@healyourhunger.com, and we will send you this amazing care package with a t-shirt and 2 signed books. So please make sure to do that. It helps people tremendously to hear in your voice how the show has impacted you, so they too can get the hope and healing that they're looking for. So thank you in advance for that. I really appreciate it. And now on to our guest. I love this guy. Roy Nelson helped me close to 30 years ago. I was suffering with an eating disorder in the form of binge eating disorder. I was 50 pounds overweight. I was struggling with my weight. I'd been on a food plan and a 12-step program, and I was failing miserably. I was starting to go back up the scale again. And, I'd been up and down so many times, and I just felt like nobody could help me. Nothing was working. I was in eating disorders therapy twice a week. I mean, I was pulling out all the stops and nothing was helping me. And I just kept obsessing about food, wanting to overeating, trying to control it, losing control. It was a mess. And I thought I was going to have to spend the rest of my life that way, fighting food and fat. And I saw some people who their lives had been transformed. And I found out that both of these people were working with Roy. And that's all the evidence I needed. I saw them transform. They were both working with him. That was really the impetus for their transformation. And I said, give me his number. I'm calling him now. And I literally did that. I went straight home and called Roy Nelson and said, will you help me? And that was just a little over 29 years ago. And that was the pivot point of my transformation and my new life as a thin woman. So thank you, Roy. I just appreciate you. And he mentored me for a long time. And I said, hey, I want to help you help other people. And that's what I started to do. And I just literally just like hooked my wagon up to his and said, I'm going to be your assistant, my self-appointed assistant. You really didn't have any say in the matter, did you? And that's what happened. And down the road, we ended up deciding to join forces in every which way. So that's what happened for us. So, but we've been on this journey together, helping people, and it's been remarkable. So I want to talk today. First of all, welcome. I'm going to stop talking about you and talk to you.
Thank you. You mean I get to talk too?
Yeah, you get to talk.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but I wanted to focus this show, Roy, on fear, because fear, we've been talking about it lately. We've talked a lot about it over the years, because that seems to be the driving force of addictions. And so tell me about your experience with fear.
Well, I've been afraid my whole life. I mean, I was in over my head always from the very beginning. Almost suffocated at birth. And I was raised in a really rough place with some rough, tough people. And I was a very sensitive, shy, fearful little guy, and really wasn't equipped for the life I was in. And so most all of my decisions in life have been dictated by fear. And ultimately, I started using things. Obviously, anything when you're in that much pain, fear is very painful. And every human being is afraid to some degree or another. And the ones who think they're not afraid are the most afraid because they're burying their fears and they're angry or they're this or they're that, false bravado or whatever. I did everything I could do to medicate the fear, and then also I did everything I could do to pretend I didn't have fear. So ultimately, my solution to try to it was to pretend I didn't have fear. And so I buried it and tried to become tough, which I wasn't, but had some other people thinking I might have been. But ultimately, I started having panic attacks because when you bury your feelings, of course, I was crippled by phobias. A phobia is essentially an irrational fear. But when you're in it, it doesn't seem irrational. It seems quite real. And and so then, of course, I put myself in a lot of positions that were very scary, and then also I did a lot of things to try to overcome the fear by false bravado. So ultimately, when I started, it was a blow to my ego when I started going to doctors and telling them how I was having panic attacks and anxiety and stuff like that because I really wanted to have no fear, and I wanted to do all kinds of things to prove I wasn't afraid, that I was courageous. But ultimately, the solution to fear is facing it like any other feeling, is facing it honestly. Because if we face it honestly, then there's a way to overcome. And so, and ultimately, to not let the fear dictate our actions, because as long as I allowed fear to dictate my actions, the fear got stronger and I got weaker. So ultimately, I need, by the grace of God, and I say God, I mean the sweet spirit deep within you. I'm not talking about any religion or some faraway God up in the sky. I'm talking about the sweet spirit that resides deep in your heart. And the sweet spirit is love. And some ancient script, it talks about in love there is no fear, and perfect love casts out fear. And so the solution is the love in your heart will override the fear in your head. So, and doing the work that Tricia is laying out is a whole lot about overcoming the fear and filling your heart with love instead of with fear. So.
That's beautiful. Thank you. I mean, it's your story of overcoming panic attacks and phobias and that being the primary drive, right? I mean, you were obese, you were alcoholic, you were, crazy in many ways, but it was the panic attacks that really drove you to your knees.
Well, ultimately it was guilt and remorse that drove me to my knees.
Okay.
Because of things I'd done and said, that, and lots of times under the influence of alcohol, but just ultimately, I felt really bad about myself, and so that's really when you when you feel that way about yourself, you're not a very nice person, and you say and do a lot of things but ultimately, see, at my core, I was a decent person. Otherwise, it wouldn't have bothered me to have been that way. But ultimately, panic attacks and phobias and anxiety is what drove me to going to psychiatrists and doctors and therapists and various people like that. And I learned a lot of good things intellectually from those people, but I didn't ever learn how to overcome. In other words, see, I was looking for an intellectual solution to a spiritual problem, and I'm telling you, there isn't one. But I did, a lot of those people helped me, a lot of them helped me a little bit, and a few helped me a lot. But ultimately, it was only the sweet spirit that could make me free. And that sweet spirit is love, and it's within you, each of you. So.
Well, I know you spread a lot of love in your life, Roy. You love on everybody who gets in your way. I get to watch it. How did you come to that place of coming from love instead of fear?
Well, desperation. And the thing is, it's really important to understand, in my other life, I wasn't a bad person. I did, I made a lot of mistakes, and, obviously because I couldn't be the person I wanted to be. I didn't have the power to be the person. See, I need God's sweet, loving grace and able to do God's sweet, loving will. And then I'm talking with them, don't get hung up on the word God. It's just I use it for short, okay? Just like I'll call Tricia, Trish. You know what I mean? I call God, God, because that's a short way to say sweet spirit or whatever. But ultimately, it's a sweet spirit. And it resides deep within each of us. And that's where we're going to find it, is deep within and within our relationships with other people. So ultimately, desperation is what drove me, because oftentimes out there in that wilderness, I thought how comforting it would be if only I could believe in God, but I was way too smart. I knew there was no God. And because of my crazy religious background and history, my best hope was that there was no God, because I'd learned about a very vengeful, punishing God. And then, of course, growing up, I knew that that didn't make sense, and I thought I'd walked away from it. But the old story, you can take the boy out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the boy. And that's where I was. You can take the boy out of the crazy religion, but you don't take the crazy religion out of the boy. And so ultimately I got... When you're dying, you become open to things you wouldn't otherwise be open to. At least that's my experience. At which time, some people said to me, even if you don't believe in God, if you ask God for help, He'll help you anyway. And I had nothing to lose because I was going to die. Couldn't take the pain anymore. I was young and strong, and physically I could have taken the pain. I could have taken the physical abuse a whole lot longer. But the hell I lived in deep inside of me, the guilt and the remorse, and the loneliness, thinking I was the only one on earth that had ever felt that way, that no one would understand. Toward the end, I was going to 2 doctors, paying them out of my own pocket, could not talk to either one of them about what was really going on, because I knew they wouldn't understand. But I'm telling you, friend, I understand. There's not any feeling you could ever have that I haven't either felt or would certainly relate to and could help you overcome, all by sweet spirit. So it really doesn't matter, but ultimately desperation is what usually drives us. I had stopped smoking just because my wife at the time had stopped smoking, and she didn't think she could, but I was a big shot. I knew I could stop. But she stopped smoking, and after a couple of weeks of her being stopped out of concern and caring about her, I stopped smoking. And then within about 6 weeks, I'd put on about 15 pounds, trying really not to, but I did anyway. And then a number of things, the stars lined up for me. Enough things. Alcohol had stopped working for me as a medication to treat the fears and the panic attacks. had a lot of, in my business at the time, my major client was going out of business, so out of no fault of my own, I was being put out of business. Had several people working for me, including my brother, who were going to be out of work. It was Christmas time. I put on weight. The alcohol stopped working. My business, I got a lot of good feel goods out of my business prowess, right? And so I had so much guilt and remorse over my other activities and things that all things combined drove me to my knees to ask Sweet Spirit for help. And I had a major experience that night, a peace that came over me like I'd never experienced before in my whole life, ever. And that was the beginning. I still had to, I was 32 years old. I was a father, a husband, a homeowner, a businessman, a veteran, and a lot of other things. But I had the emotional development of an infant because I'd been using something to medicate my feelings my whole life. So my children were a lot more mature than I was, but I still had to grow up. And they tell me, growing up is a painful process if you go through it at the appropriate age, but if you postpone it a few decades, it gets really painful. At least that's my experience. So I wouldn't recommend waiting. If wherever you are in your life, this would be a good time to start. But I'm sure you're not nearly as bad off as I was. I find very few people who've been to the depths that I've been to. But of course, there's some people who've gone further and died, and gone further and didn't die. My dear father, not long before he died, he had a tube in his stomach for feeding because he had given himself esophageal cancer from probably from drinking straight liquor out of the bottle. And he poured his liquor into the tube because he was tough. He was really tough. Yeah, it's a tough. If you have this condition, I call it a condition. It's a state, physical state, but it's also an emotional, spiritual, mental state. Centers in the mind, really. If you have the addictive personality, as far as I know, there's only one way out, and that is the complete dying of the self, the dying of the ego. See, the person I was would always have the problems I had. So my only hope is that person had to cease to exist, and a new person had to be born and nurtured and developed from infancy. And my process has really been about unlearning, about letting go of the faulty data, the faulty beliefs, faulty philosophy that caused me to create a life that required excess food, alcohol, cigarettes, various and sundry things that we use to try to cope with life. So, but there definitely is a way out, and that's the wonderful thing. I feel so blessed to have been given that way, and I've devoted my life to sharing that way with as many other people as possible. So happy to be here with you tonight, Tricia. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for being here. I want to ask you about fear of people, because that's a big one for probably the human race, but more so for people with addictive tendencies, because I know for emotional eaters, we isolate. We're so good at, we seem friendly, we seem outgoing and friendly, we always smile, but then we isolate and we burrow into our homes with our food and our binge watching television, and shut people out.
Very true.
So will you talk to me about that fear of people? I guess fear of intimacy.
Well, this can be a very lonely walk. This having this condition, because people like us treat loneliness with isolation. It's crazy, you'd think you'd do the opposite, but it's just because I never knew what to say. I didn't know how to make small talk. I didn't know what to, I'd always put my foot in my mouth, and so yeah, it was not easy. It's hiding out, and but ultimately, if I could have, I would have gone through life needing no one. But fortunately for me, I have this condition that requires me to need people to need people like Tricia and to need people who understand and care, and to be someone who understands and cares. So, yeah, nobody can do this alone, not even close. And of course, out there in the world, see, most people are not, they don't understand the condition unless they have it. And a lot of people who have it don't understand they had it, because I've had it my whole life. I had no idea what it was. I knew I was different. I knew I didn't fit in. I knew this, I knew that. But somehow I didn't have any idea of the gravity of the condition I was suffering from. I knew I was fat. I knew I was crazy. Knew this, knew that, but I didn't put any of it together. But there's no, everything on the outside is a manifestation of what's on the inside. And most in the world, most people are treating the symptoms of what's on the outside. And what we need to do is treat the real issues, which on the inside. And what we need to understand is that the entire problem is deep within you, deep within each person, and the entire solution is deep within also. But you see, we need other people to help us feel safe enough to face the problem, and then feel safe enough to go further into the solution.
And why is it so scary to reach out for help or to have somebody know us? Because that's really the fear, isn't it? That we're going to be exposed or known or seen.
Yeah, sure. Well, the thing is, I've experienced over the years, a lot of people, it's easy to ask for help from someone who can't help you, because there's no danger of anything really changing, right? It's hard to ask help from someone who can actually help you. So, I totally relate to that. I totally understand it.
Because then you might actually get better.
Precisely. Because, see, the thing is, people don't delude themselves because they're bad. People aren't dishonest with themselves because they're bad. They're dishonest with themselves because if they get honest, they're going to have to make changes. And people are not interested in change. I wanted to feel better, but I didn't want to change, right? And unfortunately, in order for things to get better, I have to get better. In order for things to change, I have to change. So, but ultimately, this is a huge, huge, huge opportunity. And like every opportunity, it's what each person decides to do with the opportunity that'll determine what they derive from it. So I just strongly encourage you, man, go for it. Whatever it is, what I mean. You can't even get to where I am today from where I came from. I mean, there's no way. It's grace. It's unwarranted, unearned grace. There's not anything I could do enough of to earn what's been given to me. But like the old farmer, I always bring up the old farmer, The old farmer has got to make all the investment. He's got to do all the work. Yet everything he does won't guarantee him a crop, because only Spirit can provide the necessary ingredients, to bring that crop to fruition. But if the old farmer didn't do everything he could do, he probably wouldn't get the crop. But if he does everything he can do, he probably will. The odds are he'll get the crop. So same here, same deal. If you do everything Tricia suggests to you, you'll get the reward. You'll get the results. And so whatever it costs you to go through with the process will be a small price compared to what it'll cost you if you don't, if you happen to be one of us. So I strongly encourage you, bite the bullet and go for it.
I want to apologize for there's a little street noise here on this recording, and when we started recording, I noticed we had the door open outside, but it's such a lovely night and the breeze is so nice that I just couldn't bear to shut it. So I apologize for the recording if you're hearing a little bit of street noise. Yeah, this is good stuff, Roy. This is the stuff I could listen to all day. I could just listen to you talk about this stuff all day.
And I could talk about it all day. You know what I mean? And I could listen to it all day from you as well. I mean, it's just, this is music, friends. This is a fine symphony. Absolutely.
Music for the soul.
Absolutely.
Which is what we need, isn't it? We need soul food.
Absolutely.
Not food. We need soul food.
That's so true.
Our hearts need to be nourished.
I was morbidly obese, and I was starving to death.
Yeah, me too.
Absolutely. Morbidly obese and starving to death.
Yeah. Because we weren't going deep enough.
Lonesome. Lonely.
Yeah.
Didn't matter how many people were around either. I knew I always kept that protective shield between me and other people.
As did I, and that was one of the reasons I came to you for help, actually. Because I remember, you know, I had friends, but I resented everybody. Like, these people were supposed to be my closest friends. I've had hateful feelings towards, like, they just drove me nuts, you know, and I just thought there's something so wrong with me that I act like a friend, and yet I just want to wring everybody's neck. It was so, you know, the inner life and that outer life, was that dichotomy I lived in, was so painful to me. I just felt so much shame over this double life that I lived in all ways, you know, also my food behavior, of course, but really my thoughts were, you know, not aligned with how I acted to the outside world. And that really bothered me. And I really beat myself up over that, you know.
Absolutely.
So, well, you certainly changed my life, and I've watched you change like hundreds and hundreds of people's lives. And for those of you who are tuning in here, I just want you to know Roy works privately with people. He is a healer, and he takes one person at a time on a journey of total transformation. And so if that's something that's interesting to you, if you're interested in having all your compulsions removed, not just one to be replaced by another, but literally healing at the deepest level so you don't have any compulsions anymore. You're not switching deck chairs on the Titanic, but you're actually healing at the deepest level. That's the work Roy does, and it's powerful. So you can visit his website, which is
RoyNelsonHealing.com.
Yep.
RoyNelsonHealing.com.
And there's a quiz on his an addictive personality quiz. If you want to know if you have an addictive personality quiz, you can get that on his website as well. And you can also reach out to him through his website in the contact form. So please feel free. I cannot recommend enough the healing journey that Roy takes people on, and there's nothing like it on the planet. I've never seen such magic in my life as the work he does with people, and the way it opens people up and allows their pain to come falling out of them so their hearts can be healed. It's unbelievable work. So,
well, the nice thing about it, you know, and I take no credit, I'm just along for the ride, but the nice thing about it is that everything in one's life changes. The relationships are better, they make more money, because you feel better and better about yourself, you attract better into your life. So it's not just not stopping, you know, not just losing weight or whatever, is getting sober or whatever it is. It's literally everything in your life. When you change fundamentally, then everything in your life will change fundamentally also. So,
absolutely.
Anyway, love you.
Yeah. Thanks, Roy.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Thank you very much. Love you too.
Love you too. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to the Heal Your Hunger show. I'll see you on the next show.
Great to be with you. Thank you. Love you.
Take care.
If you enjoyed this show and want to get free support, insider health info, exclusive invites to events, and more, visit HealYourHunger.com.